Welcome to this session of Data Dialogues, which is a webinar series, which is co-hosted by IUDX and CSP, Center for Science and Society and Policy, IISc. This is the fifth talk in this series, and today we have a slightly different session. Till now, we had more academic sessions, but today we have a very interesting industry session, if I may. And before I introduce the speakers, the title today of the talk is Data Platform Trends and Patterns. And let me introduce the speakers. There are two speakers. Both are from Hitachi Corporation. The first speaker is Dr. Kingshuk Banerjee. He is the Director and Head R&D, Hitachi India Private Limited. He is responsible for global digital platform development and engineering. Dr. Banerjee is a specialist in development and deployment of artificial intelligence systems. And prior to his current role, he was a partner in IBM Services, where he led the delivery of cognitive business decision support services worldwide. He is a computer science graduate by training, and he has earned his doctorate in engineering management from George Washington University, USA. Dr. Banerjee is certified by Cornell and Harvard University in executive leadership and change management. And on, I think on non-technical front, he loves traveling, net surfing, and meeting the new. That includes people, culture, and technology. So welcome, Dr. Kingshuk. Looking forward to this talk. And let me introduce our second speaker. Second speaker is Pranay Verma, who is also from Hitachi. He is the Chief Researcher R&D, Hitachi Private Limited, Hitachi India. And as a leader of digital solutions, he contributes to new age technologies leveraging AI and data intelligence in the areas of connected communities, cybersecurity, digital transformation, and analytics. He has over 15 years of experience, technology background in computer science, and he's MBA from USA Anderson School. Very, very warm welcome, Pranay. It will be really looking forward to the talk. So I think without further delay, let me now hand over the screen to Dr. Kingshuk, who can start his presentation.
Sure. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here addressing you. And thank you very much for attending this session. So let me very quickly share. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Yes. While you are getting started, I just wanted to mention to the participants that you can either raise hand or you can write in the chat box, and I think towards the end I will pass on those questions to the speakers. Thank you.
Yeah. And do you see my screen, the whole thing, or it is?
We don't see the whole thing. We see it like one slide and the next slide. So I guess maybe you need to run it. Yeah, full screen now.
Full screen now. Okay. All right. So thank you very much again. It's a pleasure to address you. Now, one important thing, this entire next 1 hour will be focusing, as Abhay said, more on the business side. Okay. Now there would be some technology here and there. If you have any questions, we would love to go drill down further. But let's look at how we go about designing and implementing a data platform. So let's look at it this way. The data platform, let's segment this world into into two worlds, the world of D's and the world of P's. The D's world is data ingest, the dumps, the databases, the data lakes, all that interesting thing around persistence, the storage. Then comes the decision making and data processing. Very important. Whole bunch of machine learning, AI algorithms, all they play in this space. very often getting embedded in operational systems. And the third is even more important for the business. That is, how do you disseminate the insights and all the learnings that you have from the data? How do you visualize? How do you interpret them? How do you make them come alive for your clients, for example, for your customers? Like in case of IUDX, for example, you have a whole bunch of feeds coming in from, say, Kohima city right up to Surat or anywhere else. We make some interesting inferences about some of the images or some of the sights and sounds that we process. We come up with certain significant moments like massive traffic jams or some kind of a security problem and a certain, safety problem in a certain crossing or in a dark alley from where the feed is coming. And then how do you go and disseminate it and visualize it? How do you basically say that this is a very significant safety violation happening right now in that part of the city? So this is the world of Ds. But then there is a very interesting world, the world of Ps, our primary focus today. This is where you basically create a platform. So you have philosophy, policy, and principles around that platform. You have certain patterns and perspectives that we will get into. And then you have the people and the processes, like the people, what are the kind of things that are happening in that platform. So let us look at, and this is the most important slide that I'm gonna, dwell on for a little while. So the three things, the three trends: philosophy, policy, and principles. There is a focus on resilience. Whenever you design a platform, the first thing is, what is it doing right now? And one very important thing for last 2-3 years, based on several events that are happening worldwide, there is a very important, whether it's a social, medical, geopolitical, or whatever, the radical uncertainty management. If you create a platform today, you have got to go and create this platform for managing uncertainty. And this uncertainty can be radical. It can be, so if you are building a platform for Toyota's supply chain, you not only take care of the earthquake, the disaster recovery, but you also look at the situation for like the German automakers are facing today, like procurement of nickel, palladium, like platinum and all those things, right? How do you go and have arrange for alternate sources? If you are working for public governance kind of a platform like UNESCO and all, the biggest problem is how do you go and ensure like food security for Africa and many other places worldwide. So resilience is a very important thing. And to do resilience, you have to put in the right module, right architecture, right things in place so that not only business wise it is resilient, but also architecture wise. You can go switch on and switch off certain components, certain containers, certain managed services from one part of the world to other. You can easily switch over and keep your business going, your business continuity. Very important. Second thing, this is a fantastic thing, is all these things for public, uh, public governance platforms are, mass outreach platform like Twitter, like Facebook. They're so important. Deeper interest in trust and data democratization. We all know that the data is going to be, we all agree today. There's a consensus kind of. Let as many people participate in platform. That's the democratization, right? Let as many people get value out of my platform if it's a public governance platform. Of course, there are narrower focused platform that we always design and develop for certain things like circular economy. for OEM, the manufacturers and all these things, there are some very targeted platforms that we have with the remanufacturers, refurbishers and all. But the most important thing is that you have to have trust. And this is a very interesting thing. How do you inject trust? The very display of a catalog, the kind of stuff that you see when you are on the landing page, that's where you start building up the trust. What all items do you see? For example, for Amazon, Rakuten, Alibaba, eBay, this is a huge problem. The the merchandise that you display on your landing page, the top few, how do you go and send the message across to all your suppliers that you have an equal playing field? Why some of them are being shown right on the top where the others are being relegated? You have got to come up with a rationale, with a transparency in the decision making, being exposed to all parties so that they all feel, okay, looks like this is a fair play. And then there is a very interesting thing, a contention that we are seeing between neutrality and ethics and principles. This is coming more and more today. And this is partly because a lot of geopolitical situations, if you look at the US elections, if you look at the Twitter and its some of its decisions are always being asked, re-asked, they've been re-looked at. So are we being neutral? If we are neutral, then maybe we let any tweets pass through my platform. But on the other hand, if we start getting we start taking stands that this is the kind of tweets we're going to allow, then basically you are no more probably neutral that much. Now you have certain filters. So where do these things come? So platform design is extremely important, because without these things, just developing or coding, it does not help. Your platform will not be adopted. Right now, we are actually contending with some of such situations within Hitachi, and we'll talk about it later, that when we design a platform, how fast this is getting adopted. Third thing, cloud edge rebalancing, extremely important, especially for a company like Hitachi or a company like public governance, enterprise governance institution. The power is definitely shifting towards the edges, and that's how it should be. It's natural, right? Because initially for first 10-15 years, say from the emergence of internet, everybody was trying to create as much of an internet platform. But now internet platform alone it's good enough, but it is the edges where you are collecting the data from, where you are actually interacting with the real life, the cyber physical systems for us, the Hitachi elevators, the escalators, the air conditioners. If you push more and more intelligence into the air conditioners, they don't have to go back and forth with the data with the platform. They can go and look at how many people are there in the room and immediately lower down the temperature so that in a few minutes it starts cooling off. It does not have to take the images of all the people, violate the privacy, and send it back to a platform in Japan or Singapore or somewhere else in the world, or even in India for that matter, right? Outside the premise. So very important, cloud edge rebalancing. There is more empowerment that's happening on the edges. What does that mean? That the cyber physical systems, the mechanical engineers, the electrical engineers, civil engineers, they are metallurgical engineers, they're going to get more and more power with their ecosystem, as opposed to computer scientists or some programmers trying to go and put all the intelligence in the platform. But the platform itself is also going through a transformation, and that is a distributed backbone. Because now if we go and deploy any services, we have them in microservices, containers deployed in different parts of the horizontally scaled system and a hypervisors and all. So this is getting highly distributed. That's a very interesting thing. Let's look at more technology stuff now. Environment consolidation, very important. More and more transactional systems and analytic systems, they're coming together. 25, 20 years back, when I used to go and visit my clients across the world, the first question they would say, are you a transaction banking specialist? Are you talking about my structured data, RDBMS, throughput and all? So when I go to the ATM and take $20 out or 20 rupees out, do I get the right transactions immediately, with the ACID properties, atomicity, consistency, integrity, and all that stuff, right? Today, you need that. But even when you do that, you also need an analytics agent embedded in the transactions, even probably in the ATM itself, which can take a look at you, which can say, okay, you are the guy, and you are probably the bona fide customer, and there is a fraud prevention, there is a security alert, all this kind of analytics analytics agents are getting embedded inside those transactional systems. So they're working together. So operational systems, data warehouses, transactional systems, they're all coming together thanks to the phenomenal processing power, storage power, the platform power. Everything is horizontally scaled, hypervisor. So why don't you go and put all of them together and see how does it work out? Probably you will get the same throughput, but with value-added functions, right? Very interesting. Development and operations, they are coming together. Important. Why? Because where you develop, that's where you deploy, and that's where you see how this is going to operate. And DevOps, the thing that we talked about, actually had multiple components to it. Where you develop, that's where you operate. But that can be looked at from the data point of view or from the machine learning model or analytics point of view. So the way I see it is that DevOps is a much big, broader umbrella kind of thing. Though if you go to Wikipedia, you will see data ops and model ops, they put their stuff right in the middle, rightfully so, because if you are, if you are a citizen of Africa, you'd like to see the map with Africa in the middle and America and India on the side. On the other hand, we see a little bit of a different view of India. So similarly, if you're a data engineer, for you start looking at it from the data perspective, like how do you go and data engineer from the data perspective, you do both the development and operations together. Similarly for the model guys, right? But long story short, the development and operations coming together. I remember IBM, we started doing that in 2002, 2003. There was a system we had called Bluemix, and where there was a whole, wherever you load the data, you develop and you deploy it straight then and there for the immediate consumption. This is happening more and more today. And one of the platforms that we are developing within Hitachi, the first principle is it a DevOps one? Okay. Data layout. This is a fantastic. It's a fabulous discussion, going on. Like you have those data warehouses of yesteryears where you consolidate, conform all kinds of dimensions, bring data from all over the world into one data warehouse. Then you move it to data lakes. And now they are talking more and more in terms of data fabrics and data mesh. In case of a data fabric and data, just hold on to that thought. I have some very interesting things there. What exactly is a data fabric and what exactly is a data mesh, and how do they differ from the yesteryears? We'll come to that. And then there is another slide I have on Lambda and Delta Lake architecture. We'll talk about that in a minute. Rapid and adaptive engineering. And easier things, let's get them out of the way. reusability, pipeline, composability, one app feeding into the other, one process feeding into the other, so that you can very quickly go and compose a new process based on the granular processes. How do you go and aggregate and create aggregated functions out of the microservices or the low level functions? That is where the rapid engineering, adaptive engineering is there. Gartner has something called X analytics. You may take a look at it. Very interesting proposition. Low code, no code. I'm going to write just a few lines of glue code, and rest of the stuff they all come together as soon as possible for me. Not necessarily for a researcher, but when you go and develop a product for the end users or even for enterprise IT guys, they will ask for LC&C these days pretty much. And then you have the micro app, microservices, and mesh computing thing. And finally, deployment, we all know, hybrid clouders, containers, this is like pretty much the standard thing. There is a people and processing trend, talent shortage, full stack developers, Java, Python, very much in demand, Hadoop, Apache Spark, and they doing Kafka, right? And there is an ever increasing need and shortage. So it's a very interesting thing. A very niche group of people, highly talented in multiple things, whereas then there is another huge group of people, waiting to be trained. How do you go and bridge this gap? And of course, then there is the design thinking and use case driven approach. People have understood that when you start designing something, it's important to do design thing. You start drawing use cases, you do as much as possible boxes and their interfaces and their APIs beforehand, as opposed to jumping onto a data design or a model design straight away. It doesn't pay. And if you look at some of the Gartner, Forrester, some of the important parents, you'll see everybody is talking about. You go to the Barclays Bank, you go to Bank of America, you go to BTMU in Tokyo, everywhere they're talking about connected governance. How can you connect the dots between cybersecurity, privacy, value management, risk management, resilience, disaster recovery, right from the beginning? You look at the architecture from all possible angles before you start jumping onto a data platform design. The next two slides, 5 minutes I'll take. First one, data fabric is gaining popularity over data lakes. Why? You have been putting all the data into data lakes, dumping it into there, and then you say, let machine learning go and figure it out. What's going on there? Fine, everything is okay. There's nothing wrong there, except the fact that now you have lost the sense of, policy management completely. So people are now coming to this realization. You need to have some kind of a centralization while we anyway move to our federal structure. Federation is data federation. Decentralization is the name of the game. But that said, how can we go and create some of the basic templates, basic processes standardized at the enterprise level and push it over to all my arms and legs strewn across the world in different departments, different places on whom I don't have any control how they operate. So how do I go and start pushing them? So one interesting thing, one big problem that we had in the data warehouse world, and one big problem we had the data lake world. In the data warehouse world, we used to go and look at the dimensions manually. We have got to create kind of a glossary and all. We still need to do that. We have to understand the semantics behind the words. But in today's world, you have AI go through massive amount of data and discover those metadata more easily. And those metadata, let them feed and guide your overall enterprise principles in creating the data layout. And that's what data fabric is. For example, I'm a finance guy, and what I do is, if I was 25 years back and I am creating, for example, a little bit of a alternate mortgage payment system for one state here, or for example, a healthcare system. I am creating. And in healthcare, very often, there are new systems coming up, emerging ones. So I have to create the data. I have to design the data structures. I will take all those, tools for data modeling, and I will create that thing. There is an alternative way we can do it. I can have a mass amount of data dumped onto my lake from policies, this, that. And if I can start crawling that thing and start creating out the main metadata, the main concepts, the main entities out of all my stuff and say, these are the top 6, 7, entities, and these are the top 50 attributes, given the data I have, data-driven discovery of the metadata structures. And then I take these metadata structures, I have some basis, I create some enterprise policies, and I push it to the different states, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala, all over, and say that these are the enterprise principles. There is a data fabric that I have created with the basic, fabric of the, infra. And why don't you go and implement to these things your data products? So that is one way of doing it. And so there is some policy, some governance on a massive data lake thing. On the other hand, there is another movement called data mesh. Data mesh is emerging not as developed as data product, data fabric, but data mesh says that I will give more decentralization, more federation, more power basically to all those peripheral units in the state. Let them go and design the data product based on my whatever I have shared with them, but let them tweak it, modify it, so long and so forth. There is a contractual governance in the consumption model of what they develop, I'm fine. So data mesh is a little bit more, people-centric business. And it also depends upon the companies who are like Microsoft. For them, probably data mesh is a fantastic natural ally because they are used in different Microsoft licenses, different parts, smaller, data models that get created all the time. And you want to go and bring them up in a mesh architecture. Whereas in a data fabric, it is very popular with companies like IBM, SAP, and others who are pushing data fabric in a big way so that there is more centralized, control over the whole thing. So if you see here in this, this thing, you see DevOps, DataOps, and MLOps. They are in the operation layer. Here is the governance layer. And of course, these are all we know as it is. But the more interesting things out here is this. You see out here, the system of records, where you used to maintain the records, and system of engagement. They are coming together. How come? Let's give an example. In a banking system in Rabobank in Netherlands, Amsterdam, I was consulting with them even 7 years back. They were talking about, Kingshuk, we have a system of records on all the customer data. But suddenly there is an event we understand, a life-turning event for this guy getting married, guy moving from one place to another, got a PhD or whatever, and now is looking for a big break. So these are life-turning events, and as soon as that event happens, right in that system, I want to go and engage the customer with an offer. Okay, looks like you have married. You want a housing mortgage loan. I'm going to give you a housing mortgage loan right in that system, as opposed to taking that feed, passing it onto a Siebel system, or these days Salesforce, and let them go and contact you based on that feed. No, wherever I sensed it, right away, straight then and there, I try to engage with him and see if I can increase my sales or even better, customer satisfaction, because I am proactively understanding the event and proactively reaching out to the customer. Interesting thing, Lambda architecture versus Delta Lake. Now, Lambda architecture, most of us know that it's a batch and streaming needs. We very often have it, like overnight from the batch, insurance data, and all that thing pushing in, whereas the streaming needs, right now, the guy is doing some kind of a transaction, and I want to go and process them in parallel stream simultaneously, satisfying two different objectives, optimally. Whereas Delta Lake is a little bit different. It tries to unify the streaming and the batch processes for a unified downstream processing from, and there are different layers of Delta format, bronze layer, gold layer, silver, all these things. But the whole idea is from time to time, you try to unify them so that some of the analytics and all that are running downstream, they are working on the same thing. You don't have to duplicate the effort. Okay, up to this part, this is what we have on the trends and patterns. I pause here for 5 minutes for any question and answer before we roll over to Pranay-san's discourse on a specific Hitachi case study.
Thank you, Dr. Kingshuk. I would just, as you said, any questions from anybody? I don't see anything on the chat. Okay. I have one question. So when we talk about like when Hitachi talks about platforms, right? So is it in the enterprise setting? Is the data platform for sharing data within an enterprise, or like is it for like in what context are we talking about these platforms?
Okay, well, fabulous question. Thank you very much. So Hitachi tries to answer that question depending upon whom we are talking to. If we are talking to our customers, we have a platform called Lumada, very famous. You can look at it, Lumada, Lumada. And Lumada platform is more of, uh, sales and marketing catalog at the moment. You go there, you see all kinds of platforms, all kinds of, products and services that we sell, massive amount of them. We can download them. You can experience some of them straight away. So that's a kind of a B2C platform, catering to our enterprise users. If we are talking to a customer, say like Pranay-san will take you through a smart city platform for, say, for UP government for Varanasi, it is like, a B2B kind of a platform where we map the stakeholders and the perspectives based on our understanding and of the situation. And it is a B2B, more targeted, more, it is not like a multi-tenant SaaS model. It can be, but it is more of a single tenant, high throughput, high availability, a highly specific platform specifically for Varanasi. Can we go and repurpose them for the city of, say, Belgaum and Kohima, or for Chandigarh, or for any other? Of course, yes, we can do that. For Surat, we can repurpose them, but we are not going to go and have all of them hosted up in one platform right away, because it's too much of a tall order without knowing the volumetrics, how much of massive data that can be flowing through. If we are talking to researchers like us in Hitachi and the business partners, it is an intra-enterprise platform enabled by single sign-on. We have our own export control needs, and the containerization structure is very different. So depending upon whom we speak, what do we do, our platform flavor and the overall architecture keeps changing to some extent from time to time. We do not get into Rakuten or Amazon kind of thing, or Amazon kind of a thing in a hypervisor world. So in that sense, our platforms are different.
Thank
Does
you.
that, does that answer your question?
Yes, yes. So one more follow-up question on that is that, for example, in the second setting, when you're talking about where you are distributing data to consumers who are external to the people who have developed this, it's not the intra-enterprise. Like how does this authorizations, like when you serve data, how does that scale up? Like this is something we talked a little bit in data fabric, right? Like that. How do you really come up with, I don't know, policies, whom to give data, whom to not give data, and something which a platform can handle, and most of the times maybe maybe UP government wants it in a different way, Maharashtra government wants it in a different way. Like how do you tune your platform to that? I mean,
Awesome.
one is username passwords, but I'm sure you have to do much more than that, right?
Awesome question. It's a fantastic question. You know why? Because that's why we have come up, and maybe I can share with you in a separate session sometime else, is our tech share platform, because it's exactly the same thing, perspectives. So Maharashtra government, you have got to model it as a perspective of Maharashtra government. Then there is a Karnataka government perspective. So you switch the perspective. Usually it is in the top end, right hand side, and if Pranay, if time permits after Pranay's presentation, I will show you that model. Like you just go and change the flick with the click and a flick. You change the perspective, your overall user interface design, the entitlement, the kind of things you see and the kind of things you access, they all change. So the perspectives has got three main components. One is a role-based role. There is a business unit. In your case, it is the state. And the third is the policies, their entitlement. So all these things. So what you need is basically a very strong entitlement model. You have got to design the entitlement model ahead of time. And whenever anybody wants to access any granules of data or any feed of data, first thing you pass the credentials of that user through that entitlement model, and the entitlement model tells you these are the microservices you are entitled to, and these are the data that you can access, and this is the time and all the thing, and if you don't have that, this is the kind of approval workflow you have got to walk through for finally getting approved. So I can take you through those architecture and all in a separate session. But yes, that's how we do it. Entitlement model that sits on top of the data access layer.
Excellent, thanks. So I let me just check once. Yeah, so we don't have any more questions right now. So I guess maybe Pranay, you can continue, and then we can come back to questions after the end of your talk.
Right, David. Yeah. Thank you, Kingshuk-san, for that context setting and details around the platform-specific patterns and trends. Let me share my screen. I hope my screen is visible to all. So in the next 15 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever time is remaining, I would like to set the context around the smart city applications, talking about a specific pattern which is derived out of the platform related attributes which we discussed some time back. And taking a note of that, I want to provide a layered approach to how smart governance, or for that matter, how smart cities, new applications are considering, and then therein we are having very specific applications that is becoming a kind of a game changers. So before that, very specific in a broader level, talk about what a smart city context is. Uh, as you may be recognizing, these are some of the key components, very specific key components around which a lot of innovations is happening. For example, smart government. When I talk about smart government, IUDX, data exchange platforms, these are new ways in which government is engaging with academia and industrial partners in terms of how they are sharing the data and introducing applications that can be consumed by the citizens. Because one of the most important missions for government is how do they connect to the citizens in terms of their services, whether it is registration services, marriage, child, things like that, or it is about the grievance management systems. So we have Swachhta related to waste management and all. And so there is a lot of innovation happening in this space. Similarly, smart manufacturing. Now, if you look at smart manufacturing, the process intelligence is now shifting to digital twin. And even now, a step further than digital twin, you have human in loop context. So you are taking into account how a human reacts with the system, not only the sensors, but also when human comes in, what are the effects that will play into the manufacturing process. Then there are the other areas, for example, smart transportation. So you have a lot of number plate recognition systems that is communicating with your traffic control systems. And further, you are giving the intelligence to the transport operators in terms of how they should do the route planning. And further step in terms of the multimodal applications that is coming up. A very excellent work which was done in Surat by the IUDX team and partners, and so on and so forth in the other areas. But if you look at all of these segments, most of these segments are accelerated not because of the digital infrastructure that is going in, but because of the technology that is connecting the digital infrastructure and generating intelligence. So, for example, if we talk about brick and steel infrastructure now being scaled up to more smart in the sense that we have sensors such as acoustic sensors and LiDAR sensors. So with LiDAR sensors, we have now more real-time analysis being done, right? Which kinds of engages in the way human is using it in terms of autonomous driving. Also, we have 3D cameras. So not only the people, we can also check the depth and be able to do several things. So these are the growth and influencing factors in the smart city context, uh, which is creating new applications and new areas for enterprises to play in. Uh, and then there are the other resource optimization and city modernizations. Now, for the government, it is important that the governance services improves, right? The OPEX goes down as well as the value to the citizens become higher in terms of the SDG goals, right? So more efficiency in terms of how we do the waste management operations or healthcare management, things like telemedicines, which is coming up. It is connecting the patients to the let's say at a district or a central level hospitals, and the e-medical records. All of this is creating new value to the healthcare systems. So these are the new areas which is kind of influencing day-to-day interactions in this space. Now, that being said, data-driven technologies, this is the key word, because data, nothing like before, we are able to generate a lot of massive amount of data from all the equipment, sensors, interaction with the human citizens. This becomes a key in which how the services are being delivered, how the citizens are interacting with the existing government systems. And of course, technology. Technology has its own path. As and when the demand is increasing and the supply is not able to meet that demand, there is a disruption. A new technology comes in to fill the gap. That is where we are seeing a lot of integrated solutions. So when we talk about a smart city, we not only talk about improvement in the services, we are talking about interconnections, how these components are interacting with each other to deliver the services, right? That is very important. Okay, so with this background, let's talk a little about citizen participation, because you may all recognize a city is smart only if the citizens become smart. Uh, so, for example, participation. How do the citizens participate in the development of a smart city? Uh, so we have panchayats at a village level, and we also have town halls at a city level. Now, these are very important institutional components where you listen to the citizens. One area where government has to improve is about how do they collect the data, analyze it, interpret it, and be able to respond quickly to the citizen needs. For enterprises or the startup community, it becomes easier because they are engaging. But how does government do this? One good way is the data exchange platform. I think IUDX is doing a right job, very good job here, and we are very happy to associate. So citizens have a lot of experience about the city and how they want the services to be. So we need to bridge this gap between the physical and the digital, and be able to augment information that can be useful service. The second is COVID. COVID has played a huge role in terms of how digital is being utilized in the day-to-day activities. Right now, I'm sitting at the comfort of my home and interacting with all of you. This was there before, but now it's become a norm. Right. So pandemic has created limitless, endless. I think possibilities of digital, and it is facilitating remote work. So we need to keep in mind how humans want to utilize such systems and be able to deliver this. Third is there is a behavioral shift in the citizens. So there are challenges in terms of how the citizen wants the services to be done. So for example, there is more dependency upon the public transportation now. Earlier, not so much so. So how do we make sure that our public transportation systems are running seamless? It's kind of servicing the needs of the citizens. And then the responsible use of technology and openness and transparency backed development. So Kingshuk in his earlier presentation did talk about trust. He did mention about that a lot of data is being harvested. Citizens are more aware and conscious about how this data is being utilized. More than awareness, there is about the identity, and we have to respect that. So we have to bring in a certain level of transparency in how we are operating the data. So be able to do things at the edge and derive those insights that can be utilized to provision the services that we need to do. And also environment friendly technology, right? So green energy. Uh, so these are the specific things and trends around where citizen wants the need. So we have to be citizen centric. And that's why the next slide, this particular slide, which I'm showing now, is presenting a layered approach to citizen-centric data-driven governance. And I want to specifically highlight what are the key areas in which we have to focus when we are developing applications or we are looking at technology. Now, if we look at government, so government is adopting remote operations and workflow automations, right? And why this is important from a viewpoint of citizen centricity is so that they are able to service faster. They're able to respond quickly to the request which is happening. Now, nobody wants a service, which is like you have to wait for 10 days to get some application moving, and then another 10 days to get your file passed by another level. And then after a month or so, you will have your passport, right? Now, you wanted everything quickly. So these remote operation capabilities become important. Now, if you want to do something remote, we need to connect our subsystems. And that is where workflow automation is important. So we have to define the standard operating procedures. Keeping that in mind, what are the operating procedures, how they are dependent upon each other. So such kind of semantic understanding as well as relationship is something that we have to define and then create workflows. Now, from a citizen perspective, there are three key important things. One is the trust. So there are two types of trust. One is about the data, the integrity of the data itself, that the data is genuine, correct. And the other is the trust by the platform. So the services that we are giving is specifically meant for the citizens. It kinds of encapsulate the values of the digital identity as well as we have a lot of norms coming in terms of personal data, how the personal data should be protected and handled. Of course, the European GDPR is very powerful, but our PDP bill is also tabled. And I think in each verticals now we will be defining how the data should be manipulated, handled, and should be passed. Keeping that in mind, digital trust becomes a very specific focusing area for us to look at how do we create or write applications for the citizens. Second is anything and everything that we do should connect with how the citizen are utilizing it and what kind of a transformation it is bringing in their life. So it has to map to the persona of the citizen and look at how their journey is transforming. That is where the value is, and the respect will come from the citizen in terms of adopting any kind of citizen services that we do. Third part is the anytime, anywhere, and any device access, right? So it's about seamless experience. So when I present to you this talk, I can also navigate through my let's say iPad. And when I do that, do I want to get the same experience of utilizing the Teams platform? Absolutely yes. Same is the demand for any citizen. Now what we are doing today through any means, they should be able to access anywhere they are, as well as any medium that they interact with and get the same specific experience. Now, taking that in mind, of course, there are these tech enablers that are helping us today to do a lot of these things. When I talked about trust, most of the data validations and data security integrity aspects is handled by blockchain. It's becoming a very powerful tool, and many of the governance applications are utilizing it. So not only in the space of, let's say, digital and smart city, but also in agriculture, where organic traceability becomes very important. There are a lot of players who are coming up with blockchain-based platform and even in payments. So for example, fintech, where we want to do some kind of invoice-based processing. So Treads platform is there, and then Things like that are coming up. So these are the technology which is kind of enabling us to deliver these values to the citizens, or how the government is utilizing it. Of course, at the most bottommost layer, it's going to be agile, right? It has to be quick and fast and adaptive. That is why the agile architecture is very important to include in our platform activities. And cloud is the next shift, right? So if we look at service delivery from anywhere, everywhere, I think cloud plays a major role in these areas. Now, having talked about a layered approach, let me talk about specific use cases where Hitachi has played in. And when I introduce those, I would like to give you more thoughts about the kind of activities happening. Uh, okay, let me run this. Now, what we see here is there are several applications that demand, people tracking for safety and surveillance. I think safe city projects are there, so it demands how the city surveillance cameras they connect with each other, and we are able to monitor how the movement of people happens. But think about this for a moment. What is the challenge here? There is a definite challenge about the privacy of the individual. Now, while the cameras maybe installed by let's say a public facing entity, but the data belongs to the citizen. The rights of the citizens need to be enforced. So, how do we address this challenge? And this is not only in the case of smart city, but be it any setup, whether it is airport, office, schools, we have to look into how do we manage and respond to these privacy norms. So we have addressed this, we have developed a patented technology. It's a very fast real-time pixelization of the activities. And while we do the pixelization, we make sure that the motion of the actions and other things are still recognizable so that the utility purpose of doing such activities are retained. And how do we do this? Uh, we use a concept of zero knowledge analysis. So what happens in a zero knowledge analysis is you move the logic of analytics at the edge. While you do those activity, we have to ensure that how this logic management should be done and an aggregation. So we have a mechanism where we are distributing the analytical modules, deciding at real time which components should be utilized for such purpose. And then while we do all of this activity, we make sure that it is following, complying with the norms, and we are able to extract meaningful insights, which is then assembled and reported. So this is one specific activity which I talk about privacy, and then developing the trust based on privacy. And then, of course, when we look at real-time operations, this is a very interesting work which we did together with IUDX team in Varanasi. It talks about real-time operations, but very interesting to understand here is how do we take technology that is developed for another purpose and then apply it here. So in this particular case, and maybe when I present the video, it becomes a little specific, but let me give you a background. A technology here is about accelerometer. It's about data analysis coming from sensors, right? It's meant for a specific purpose. So let's say here we are looking at sensors, accelerometer, gyroscope, all these sensors, and we are able to visualize what is the real-time weight of the entity. Now, given in the context of waste management, it can be utilized to look into how much of garbage is being collected in the vehicle at a real time. So things like this have not happened before. So when we talk about real-time remote operations, we need to also consider what kind of information should be collected and how it should be disseminated to be able to serve the end purpose. And in another context, the same technology can be utilized to differentiate between a pilferage and maybe a load consumptions. So let's look into the video and we'll come back to this.
With India witnessing rapid urbanization, cities face the pressing issue of
Can you hear the audio? If somebody can confirm.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
which is affecting the different spheres of the ecosystem. Leveraging its expertise in operational technology and information technology, Hitachi is bringing data-driven intelligence to waste management using IUDX platform. Each waste pickup vehicle is provided with a smartphone that acts as an agent to communicate the exact vehicle location via GPS feed and waste pickup estimate. The smart system enables the command and control center to identify anomalies and generate alerts in real time. In the event of a vehicle breakdown or complete filling of capacity, recommendations are made on the nearest vehicle to coordinate for garbage collection. By ensuring complete waste lifting and efficient waste management, Hitachi is powering good and helping citizens lead a better quality of life.
Yeah. So that was a good piece of work which we did together with IUDX team. And now, since many cities are, we understand that this would be the thing that we would like to take to many cities. Many cities are responding to it, and we are also engaging. And so things like this is important in terms of how do we look at traditional services and how do we look at how the technology exists to be able to map it. And while we do such activity for one department, we should also look into the how the other departments are functioning. So, for example, if we are able to connect to the smart governance, grievance management services, can we handle grievance at real time and give the experience to the user how his grievance complaint that he's reported is being addressed. That brings in the citizen interaction piece into this. All right. Now, I have given two examples in the context of smart cities, how the smart government should look at remote monitoring or the workflow automations. And then we also talked about the privacy norms and what technology should help us do more of trust-based privacy. Now, this is how Gartner looks at emerging technologies. And I want to just throw lights on two areas. Since as part of data exchange platform, I looked into the analytics framework. That's a very beautiful piece of work. And I feel there are two areas that could be something that we can look into and would be happy to also discuss separately. Of course, one is the self-integrating applications. And if you look at this hype cycle, it is at an early phase. So it would take around next 5 years or 4 years to stable and reach a kind of a plateau where most of the enterprises will be starting to adopt it. But if we look at the merit now and be able to put our thoughts around it, this will serve a real purpose. So it is about making codeless integrations. So when we do things like command and control, think about the number of integrations we have to do. It's about integrating the data that is come from each department. And within each department, there are several sensors and several components that are deployed. Now, if I talk about water and sewage, there were sewage sensors, erosion control sensors. Then you have water pressure monitoring systems. And these are deployed across your water pipelines, right? That is one level of integration. The second is you have your existing processes and protocols. The processes piece of it, the workflow, that needs an integration. So how do we all make that quick turnaround time? And the self-integration application, by the virtue of how the platform is designed, is becoming important. And that is where semantic mapping, how these components mean, what kind of a data. So there are several vendors. Each vendor comes up with their own specification of how the data is. How do we interpret it and be able to align with the others and come up with open data models? So there are some work such as, Bricks is very popular in the case of building management. Similarly, we have K4M City. And here in Hitachi, we do a lot of work around this. And I feel with academia and institutions such as Data Kaveri, we should come together and create standards for open data models framework adoptions. And the other is the experience bit of it, right? As I talked about anytime, anywhere, any device access, the multi-experience platform, consistency in user experience across touch, voice, and gesture. And all this in understanding deeply about customers' engagement with technology. It's a design pattern. It's a thing that we have to think through about the customer journey and their personas. But these are the important technology that is defined by Gartner, and also many industries are adopting it. So I think I would like to say that these areas is where the enterprises, industry, academia, everything should come together and then discuss. These are some of the slides which I had prepared to discuss. And so any questions, let's have some interaction basically.
Thank you, Pranay. Thank you. This was really interesting. So I just open the floor for any questions before I fire away mine, because I have a couple of them. But let me just wait for see the chat. Okay, so maybe I can ask. Well, if there are, please feel free to ask. But I think I have a couple of questions. So one one of the questions I want to check with you, Pranay, is that this garbage collection app that you showed, right? So I guess this can be generalized even further. I mean, I guess, how about, I mean, have you thought of doing the same thing with ITMS, right? Like we keep doing the bus tracking. There's a bus live tracking, that is one, and then along with it, because if you have a smartphone, you can do maybe bus occupancy, quick occupancy analysis, um, and some things like that, right? Like maybe some other video analytics can also be put in, and that this may be very useful because again, I've seen these boxes which they put on the buses that keeps going for I mean, it's not very reliable. Whereas smartphone may turn out to be much more reliable. So, any thoughts on that?
Right. I think the specific use case which you mentioned, so there is a lot of amount of work which is happening in terms of taking the feeds from camera and then looking at the number of people and then correlating with the ticketing systems and all. And the specific technology which I talked about in terms of how do we look at the overall weight and the changes in weight. We did apply it to ITMS scenarios, not in the context of what you said, but we look at the things like overweight detections
Yeah. I mean, so
becomes an
that will
issue.
also
Yeah,
tell you how much the probably loading is, and I mean,
yeah,
we don't need to get exact estimate of the occupancy, but at least those four categories we can easily figure out, right?
yeah. I think it must be. It is very much applicable to those scenarios. And just to add to that, so if you look at situations which have not happened in the past, which was very difficult, one of the use case which I want to highlight is about pilferage and high value goods, right? How do we make sure that a vehicle which is meant to transport a certain load reaches from a destination, from a source A to a destination, let's say B, without any loss of goods? Uh, so those are the use cases which we have applied in the past, and it has merited in terms of several fleet being using these services. And the one which you mentioned, very happy, Abhay, we can work into that, we can look into it, and we can see how we can take it.
Great. Uh, one more question I have is that I think when you talk about the technology enablers and talk about blockchain, I mean, my understanding is again that blockchain is where you bring in smart contracts and maybe transactions. But do you think like for like specifically for a data exchange platform like IUDX, where I'm not doing transactions, what would be the role of like blockchain? I mean, would it be like for auditing, keeping the audit logs? Would that be the place where we can look for something? Or I'm just trying to understand where a technology like blockchain can fit into an exchange platform. Um, what would be a natural fit?
Yeah. So here is my say. Now, if I look at technology such as blockchain, the absolute merit in comes in scenarios where there are multiple stakeholders involved, uh,
Hmm.
each not trusting one another. At the same time, they want to do activities based on the information that each entity is passing, right? So that is
Hmm.
where smart contracts or traceability components become very specific areas where blockchain is playing. In case of IUDX, I feel there is a lot of telemetry that would be needed going forward in
Yeah.
terms of how the data is being consumed, or who will be able to
I
pay for
mean,
such data.
API and usage logs, and that would be required again both by the provider as well as the consumer. So,
Yeah, but at this point, it is only IUDX alone who is managing all the data, right? You are running your own data centers and all. But going
correct.
forward, if let's say if you're looking at a distributed data store, multiple entities managing it, that is where things like consolidation in terms of blockchain platform has a real merit in. But
Okay.
these are really good discussions. Away.
I mean, it's possible because see, we currently, because it's just starting, we have a system where we are serving data, but as a standard, IUDX does allow for federated resource servers, right? Federated data access. So in that case, the audit logs will sit with some another party, and I mean, all three of the IUDX plus the consumer plus provider need to agree on that everything is all right, right?
Right, right. You're right. Yeah.
Okay, let me just check the chat window one more time. Any more questions? Okay, I'll ask one more then, I think. So, I wanted to ask about this real-time pixelization that you were showing. So you said you send logic to the edge. I mean, that's fairly understandable. But what happens in the scenarios where, like, you're not able to, like if you have to put it on a camera, how does the camera is not installed by you, how does the camera manufacturer, I don't know, how do they trust whatever you are sending, that logic analysis is trustworthy? Again, you may send a virus inside the camera, right? How does that work out?
Right. So I think so I'll take the example of the airports where we have kind of deployed such things, and specifically about Vienna. And even very recently, we had such discussions with the Bangalore International Airport, right? So what is happening here is, let's say these cameras from Honeywell or elsewhere, which is being deployed, they do send their data to the local stores, which is data store of the, let's say, where BIAL is operating. And that is where the control of the data is. You don't want the data to go anywhere outside of it. So what we do is we deploy a portion of code or logic, which is looking at the data, interpreting the actions, right? And these actions are sent to us. It doesn't include private data. It doesn't include who the people are. So, we kind of represent them in terms of bits, which talks about the meta level representation of individual, not the representation of the individual itself. It talks about a person wearing green shirt, having this age. So such level of analytics is what we kind of take into that will be utilized for our applications when we integrate. So this is where we look into what kind of infrastructure it is there, what kind of the privacy norms is, and then we have to see what logic needs to be transmitted. So to say shortly, it's about case by case basis, and then yeah, we kind of deploy our analytics.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, very similar cases there. I think we had talked to Hitachi only once in Electronic City, for example, where their cameras from the road send it over the fiber network to the local data center, and that's where you can do this pixelization and other things.
Yeah, yeah. The idea about pixelization is it has to be, all of these analysis has to be done in real time.
Sure.
So
I mean, that is one, but I think going forward, it is going to run a privacy roadblock, because I think pixelization is not deemed to be enough, because you can possibly, based on the timing and say the color of the car and the make of the car, essentially you can just say pixelizing a license plate won't help. I mean, essentially, so I guess you'll have to do some more higher level stuff again. So
yeah, re-identification.
and on top of it, of course, pixelization is very, as you said, very heavy resource. Like every frame has to be pixelized. So that's, yeah. Okay, great. I think very interesting talk and interesting discussions. So I think looking forward to see, first of all, the Varanasi case develop really into something on the field, and then hopefully we scale that up everywhere, and then not only just the garbage, but as I said, maybe ITMS or some crowdsourcing apps can also be thought about, like, because I think the scope is just unlimited there. So
yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. I think I do see something. Okay, yeah, there is just. Okay, so I think if there are no further questions or comments, I think we can close this session. I want to thank both Pranay and Dr. Kinshuk for a very interesting talk, and then let the conversations continue. So,
Thank you.
okay, thank you
Thank
very much.
you. Thank you.
Thanks
Take care.
everyone. Thanks everyone for attending. Bye.